Now,
Befriended me on Facebook.
Facebook status. Getting on Facebook. Getting on Twitter.
a show helping to expose the power of social media.
You can go on Facebook.
Say you write on Facebook. On Facebook.
This is the Tonya Hall Show.
My Facebook account was deleted by the man.
Now, here's Tonya Hall.
Welcome to the Tonya Hall Show, where we embrace the power of the web, everything happening on the internet today and how we're using it, whether it's conversations with the lead marketers at major brands or the small businesses making a difference. We're talking with the innovators and the changers, how to get your startup up and going and how to use platforms like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and so much more. I want to say we've got a couple of really awesome guests coming up. Both have been on the show before. Sam Malakarajan is an e-commerce specialist. He actually wrote the book, Sell Better, How to Sell Better Than Amazon. We're going to talk about him and what he's doing at HubSpot and much more. We've also got Brian Rich joining us, author of Shift and Reset. And we're going to talk about nonprofits and social media. We're also going to talk about crowdsourcing and everything that happened after the Boston Marathon and how we feel about that, and a lot of other great things. But I have to tell you, last Friday, after the show was over, literally 22 minutes after the show was over, I unplugged for the weekend. And the reason I did that was not an intentional thing so much as it was I received a phone call from my father let's just a little back up here. So my parents have been planning this really great outdoor adventure, right? So they're going to travel in an RV for 6 months and just have a wonderful, wonderful time. And we're so excited about it. And, everybody has their own family things. So I'm really excited for my parents. And so Friday morning, I get a phone call from my father saying that the RV had an accident and that my mother was being helivac to the hospital. And so at that moment on, I disconnected. I wasn't paying attention. And it was for those people who have had something like that happen, it's very, immediate that you just push everything aside and you go take care of the person you love who's in the hospital. And I was very scared. What happened? Why would they have to helivac her to a hospital? And of course I get to the hospital and she's in ER. And she has, she's covered in blood. And I got to tell you, my mother is the sweetest woman. So she's always giving to other people and she's always helping other people. And she's covered in blood and the doctor comes in and he tells me about her broken bones. And it's clear she has a broken nose and a huge gash in her forehead. And the good news is she's fine. I mean, she's going to be okay. She's got a lot of broken bones and she's got a lot of healing and rehabilitation. But the first day of their trip out of town, and I'm at the hospital the whole weekend. So I want to apologize to everybody on social media to some extent that I wasn't answering questions and I wasn't getting back to people. I'm back now. I will still be somewhat disconnected, but I'm trying to get caught up. And if I didn't get back to you, it's because I was disconnected. But without further ado, I don't want to take up the whole show talking about my family, but keep my mother, if you will, in your prayers. And if you don't pray, that's fine too. But keep us in your thoughts, certainly. Okay, Sam, I've kept you on hold long enough. That's Sam Malakarajan. Sam, you are at HubSpot. You're the author of this amazing book, which is How to Sell Better Than Amazon. We've had you on the show before. And you're also you live in the Boston area, and you went through the whole Boston Marathon manhunt. And I want to talk about all those things. Welcome back to the show, Sam.
Nice to be back.
So now you know why I was disconnected over the weekend. I don't think I told you.
Yeah, I know you kind of went dark there, but it's good to you had obviously a good reason. And sometimes it's good to disconnect from social media and focus on what's important.
It is. And I think, I was forced into doing it, of course, but there's nothing more surreal than taking care of your mom at the hospital when it's unexpected. And it was very scary time. But, you went through something very scary in Boston recently, of course, with the whole community coming together. And it was highly publicized on social media. There was a lot of activity going on. And you were yourself also tweeting about the event and what was happening. What was it like the morning of the marathon when everything broke out? Where were you?
Yeah, so it was pretty surreal for us because Boston Marathon falls on Patriots Day, which here in Boston is a holiday for most of us. So most of us were off work at the marathon. I was about 2 miles away from the finish line in an area called Brookline, and I actually heard about what was going on at the finish line through Instagram and Twitter. Maybe like 90 seconds before the National Guard guys stopped joking around and started getting very serious and moving people away from the race line. People were commenting on my Instagram, asking me if I was okay and asking me on Twitter, and I had no idea what was going on. So it was a surreal experience. Why
were they joking around? I don't understand.
Well, nobody expected anything to happen, so the National Guard guys were like chilling, and the police guys, we were talking with them. Everybody was relaxed. We'd been there for several hours. Nobody really expected anything serious to happen, so everybody was kind of laid back, and it wasn't until we heard that something was going on that everybody got really, really serious and realized that we all had to kind of move away and see what was going on. Okay, so this was all before the actual bomb took off. What about went off? So when the manhunt started, so that was in Watertown, and everything was under lockdown. It's kind of skip forward a little bit. What was that experience like? Were you in lockdown? We were, yeah. So the HubSpot office is in Cambridge, which is a couple of miles away from Watertown, but less than a mile away from MIT, where the original kind of encounter with them and with the police officer. I actually am really glad that I check my Facebook reflexively every morning, because I usually check my business email while I'm on my way into the office. So I didn't get the alert that our office was shut down. I got that through Facebook. Our director of marketing had posted on Facebook not to come into the office. So, we were a couple miles away. It was just checking in with everybody on Facebook and Twitter and kind of making sure everybody was okay and knew not to go into the office. Well, I love it. Mike Volpe actually did go to Facebook, and he said, okay, our offices are closed today. What kind of company? You guys are socially connected so much that you actually go to Facebook and Twitter. I think I actually even saw it on Twitter. That he tweeted out that the offices are closed, don't bother coming in today. I want to talk more about that, what that experience is like, and this idea of whole crowdsourcing to find an answer. Stay tuned to the Tonya Hall Show. We'll be right back after this really quick timeout.
Introducing Investing in You, hosted by Eric Gemelli, the market forecaster who predicted the market crash of September 11th in writing in his newspaper column. A book can teach you how to invest. In this show, you will learn when to invest. Investing in You will show you how to revolutionize your investing and include fascinating interviews, irreverent humor, and lifestyle segments, all to help you live and invest better. Listen every Friday at 10 a.m.
Do you have a problem with a debt to the IRS or know someone who does? Remember to listen Sundays at 10 a.m. to the TaxClosure.com radio broadcast. TaxClosure.com is heard every week on AM 1060 The Biz, Denver, Fort Collins, Cheyenne, and AM 1580 Real Radio, Colorado Springs, Pueblo. TaxClosure.com is the only radio broadcast that may be the answer to your IRS problems. That's the TaxClosure.com radio broadcast every Sunday at 10 a.m. on this station.
Retirement's approaching, and it's going to be a blast. No more meetings or dress shoes. No more commute. Finally getting to do everything you've been dreaming of. But will you really have enough to make retirement look like you want it to, no matter how long you live? Are you sure? Imagine if you could take your retirement dreams and your current strategy for reaching them and run it through a simple analysis to see if your current approach will get you to your goal. Better yet, what if on top of showing you any problem spots your approach might have, this test would also show you specifically how many years into retirement a problem might arise? Finally, what if this detailed analysis could also provide adjustments to your strategy that could help resolve any issues that might have appeared? With Dreamware, a powerful retirement analysis tool available exclusively through Ron Caskey, you can take this closer look to see if your retirement will be the one you've been dreaming of all these years. Call Ron Caskey today at 303-710-3791 for your complimentary Dreamware retirement income analysis. That number again is 303-710-3791. Call today.
Stocks are moving higher after a pair of better-than-expected economic reports. From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York, I'm Charlie Pellet. The National Association of Realtors says pending sales of existing homes climbed 1.5% in March, and consumer spending rose more than projected in March, reflecting a jump in outlays for services that's unlikely to be repeated as the biggest part of the economy softens this quarter. And with more, here's Bloomberg's Michael McKee.
People don't have a lot of money to spend, and that is a concern. And this falls into what we were talking about earlier. The disinflationary impulse out there is getting stronger. Personal consumption expenditure index, the one the Fed watches, down 0.1% during the month. It's rising at just a 1% annual rate in the month of March.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 70 points, a gain of 0.5%. S&P 500 index up 9, a gain of 0.6%. NASDAQ up 30 points, a gain there of 0.9%. That's a Bloomberg Market Minute.
I need your arms around me. I need to feel your touch. I need your understanding. I need your love so much.
Welcome back to the Tonya Hall Show, where we embrace the power of social media. Who are we playing here, Kev? Who is this?
This is Cake.
Cake.
Never
Okay,
there.
our guest today, Sam Malakarajan. Karjanan. I almost got it there, Sam. He is with HubSpot. We're talking about crowdsourcing. We're going to talk a little bit, too, about kind of online advertising and what that looks like today, what we're seeing. So are you a fan of Cake?
I have not heard them before, but I liked the music. It sounded good, although I thought for a second you guys had hung up on me because it was like a dial tone.
I know. I actually told Kevin, you scared me there for a minute. We could have lost him. So I didn't mean to go so dark at the beginning with the story about my mom. I just, I get a lot of messages. I mean, that probably happens to you, right, Sam, where you're not able to get back to everybody, and social media is so instant, so immediate, so, real time. And people have this expectation that you'll be immediately responsive, that you'll see their tweet or that you'll see their Facebook post, and they don't understand why you don't get back. Does that happen to you?
Yeah, absolutely. People think of Twitter and Facebook more like they think of instant messaging than they think of email. If I don't get back to your email in a couple of days, that's not super weird. But if I don't answer your text message or instant message or your tweet or your Facebook message, people think that's really kind of unusual behavior.
I know. So it's like you're like punished for disconnecting, and for whatever reason. You're going to be disconnecting soon, though. Kind of excited for you. You're going on a cruise, right? It's coming up.
I am. I'm super excited. I have like an addiction, obviously, to being connected to my phone, to my laptop. I really love it. I enjoy it. But once a year, I try to take at least a week or so and just completely unplug from being connected to everybody except the people in my immediate vicinity. So next week, I'm going to Florida and leaving my cell phone in Boston.
There you go. But you're coming off of a very, very busy time. I mean, It's been probably a little more quiet this last week, but kind of going back to what we were talking about before break with the Boston Marathon and then, the manhunt that took place and all of the social activity. You were telling me something really interesting that HubSpot did literally the morning of the marathon to crowdsource that your security used to crowdsource the accountability to make sure all of the HubSpot employees were okay. Share that with our listeners a little bit, will you?
Yeah, so it really amazed me because I don't know if they had a plan for this already in place, but we have between, I think, 450, 500 employees now. We're not as small as we used to be, and it was only a couple of hours after the bombing initially happened that we got an email that everybody was accounted for. And one of the ways they did that, in addition to kind of calling the listed phone numbers and things like that, nobody ever called me, but they saw that I posted on Facebook and I posted on Twitter that I was okay and that I was moving us away from the race. So they were able to kind of crowdsource me checking in with the other two people that I was with who were also colleagues to kind of make sure that everybody was okay really, really quickly, much faster than if you'd had one guy dialing 500 people to check on them. So that was really impressive, and it was honestly really moving kind of to me to see social media kind of used that way.
Then skipping forward to the day of the manhunt, that was insane. And I saw a lot of HubSpot employees as well as a lot of other friends that we have at the show in Boston who were maybe in the lockdown area or who were using different types of services or Twitter feeds to keep informed. You talked about, it's a good thing you were on Facebook that morning because you wouldn't have realized what was happening, right?
Right, yeah. So I don't actually make it a habit to check my work email until I get on the mass transit to head into the office. But I do check Facebook for whatever weird reason. And I saw that our director of marketing had posted that the office was closed, and that's how we originally found out that all of our offices were closed. The HubSpot office was closed, and we actually weren't supposed to move into the city of Cambridge. Was through Facebook and Twitter. Otherwise, I wouldn't have found out until I was on the bus.
So during the time of the lockdown, the police, FBI, they were encouraging citizens to send pictures prior to that, to send pictures that kind of resulted in them, having enough video, having enough pictures to help find the suspects at the time, to help narrow down who potentially they could go after to make sure something like this didn't happen again and hold them accountable. What was the mood like in Boston? Were people really excited to help the police? I mean, is that something that the community rallied behind?
It's definitely something the community rallied behind. I don't know necessarily if we were excited, but it absolutely blows my mind how quickly, because Boylston Street, where this happened, doesn't exactly have a lot of civic surveillance cameras. It was just amazing how the Reddit community hopped in and started prospecting through pictures. They misidentified a bunch of people, but they hopped in and helped, and all of us kind of sent what we had, to help them do it. Which was, it was good that we could do, amazing that we could do it that quickly, get so much video, so much photos, and kind of figure out who had been acting strangely. The other interesting thing, of course, was on the day of the manhunt, they asked us to not do that because a lot of people were tweeting and sharing, and the news for a while was kind of sharing on video where the police were and what kind of their tactical layout was, that was obviously the opposite of what the police wanted to happen. So it went both ways. They wanted us to share in the beginning for the investigation, but then when they were doing the manhunt, they really wanted us to not start tweeting, oh, the police are at this intersection and this intersection. That's
but candidly, and I thought about that, right? But the reason I was following the scanner was because the link was on Twitter. I mean, so yep. the perps, if you will, have the same access to the same, reporting that we do. So it was a little confusing at the time. And you're right, there was misreporting, and that I think what that's opened the door for is certainly trying to understand what people are paying attention to, what they're following. And then let's, segue that a little bit into advertising, because I think some of the same things apply to news and media reporting and the content that we consume to the kind of advertising we're responding to, because we don't respond to news reporting the same way that we used to, just like we don't respond to advertising. And you actually were sharing some kind of interesting stats with me that, kind of comparing advertising today to even where it was maybe 2 years ago, and the kind of advertising that we thought was, digital advertising that we thought was really working. Talk about why advertising with banner advertising, display advertising, what has changed in that arena?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting segue, because the best definition of inbound marketing I've heard to date is that instead of interrupting experiences people love, you create them. Right, so even when you're talking about a scary citywide experience, we're monitoring, instead of going to CNN like we may have done 3 or 4 years ago, it's actually a better experience for us to monitor Twitter hashtags and things like that. And it's the same thing when you're trying to kind of conduct commerce or do any kind of consumer relations or marketing online. The stat that I was sharing with you this morning completely blew my mind. It was you're more likely to complete Navy SEAL training and click a banner ad. Right? We published a blog article with a list of just really weird things that are more likely than a banner ad effectively leading to a sale, which is especially relevant to me because I focus mostly on e-commerce, which is selling directly online. And e-commerce shops tend to have this reflex that whenever business is down, they double down on paid media, on banner ads, PPC ads on Facebook and Google. And there are limits to how effective that's going to be because when it comes down to it, you're still trying to, I'm reading, your radio show's blog or something like that. You have a banner ad. You're still trying to interrupt the experience that I love, which is listening to your radio show with, some kind of paid advertisement. That's becoming less and less effective over time.
So where should we be putting our money? I mean, should we still be spending money on banner advertising and display advertising?
So it has its place. The prices are going to kind of normalize out as people get better at tracking how ineffective it is. Retargeting, remarketing, these kind of things can be really effective because especially if you do it in a non-spammy way. So if I add something to my cart, I abandon it, and then I go back to Facebook and you send me this, you show me an ad with a link to a really cool blog article that helps persuade me or has a correlation to me becoming a customer. I don't think banner ads are ever necessarily going to go away because it's kind of how all media is supported, but it's definitely going to normalize out as people focus on creating media and experiences on their own websites with their own brands.
I always love having you on the show, Sam. You have fun on the cruise. Thanks for coming on the show. If somebody wants to connect with you, how can they do that?
Sure, go to inboundcommerce.com. You can download a free chapter of my book as well as find a link to my Twitter.
All right, there you have it, everybody. Thanks, Sam. Have a fun cruise, and I'll be following you.
You too. Take care, Tonya.
Absolutely. That was Sam Amalekarajanan. He is on Twitter. You can find him by following me at Tonya Hall Radio. Next up, Brian Rich. We're going to talk all about the White House Correspondent Dinner and much more. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This is the story of a girl who cried a river and drowned the whole world. And while she looks so sad in photographs, I absolutely love her.
Still slow Monday morning drive, especially if you're trying to get into Boulder either side. Pretty tough at this hour. This traffic report is brought to you by Garmin. Slow speeds on the diagonal. That's southbound drive. You make that approach towards J Road. A few extra minutes on that drive into North Boulder. Also a little slow on the Boulder Turnpike. A couple pockets of slow speeds between Denver and Boulder. That last one really dragging past McCaslin. Otherwise, good drive on I-25 on either side of Longmont. Northbound's cruising up past Loveland all the way into Fort Collins. No delays really into the city as well. If you're coming down into Denver, it's pretty good through 104th, through the Thornton and Northglen area, and jams up about the Boulder Turnpike down into downtown. Also seeing good speeds on 52, 66, 56. Highway 85 is a nice drive from Brighton all the way up through Fort Lupton. Evans all the way into Greeley. Hate traffic? Don't be a hater. Get a Garmin Nuvie with subscription-free HD digital traffic and avoid it with updates as often as every 30 seconds. Drive with Garmin, the most trusted name in GPS. Give us a call on the traffic tip line. You see anything out there, 1-800-956-5794. For more information, go to SIGAlert.com. I'm Cub Buning. That's traffic.
Here is your updated weather report from the RCN Weather Center. For this morning, as Denver starts the week, look for sunny skies and a high of 79. Wind winds to 15 miles an hour. Overnight, it'll be partly cloudy with a low of around 50 with winds about 15 miles an hour. There's a chance of afternoon showers and thunderstorms on Tuesday. It'll be partly sunny with a high of 68. The chance of rain showers continues into Tuesday evening with a chance of rain and snow overnight. It'll be cloudy and cool with a low of 36. Wednesday, there's a chance of snow in the morning, a chance of rain and snow in the afternoon. It'll be mostly cloudy with a high of 42. Thursday should be a mostly sunny day with a high of 47. Again, for today, we'll kick off the week with sunshine and a high of 79 with winds to 15 miles an hour. Tonight looks partly cloudy with a low of around 50. Front range weather is heard twice each hour here on AM 1060 The Biz, your trusted source for health and wealth information. I'm Rod Tanner from the RCN Weather Center.
Brought to you by Bosch Appliances. Bosch Appliances are ranked highest in customer satisfaction with dishwashers by J.D. Power and Associates. Find great deals on ultra-quiet Bosch dishwashers at your local Bosch dealer.
Politicians are not kings. Let me say that again. Politicians are not kings. They're not superior to citizens, and their job is not to tell us the food we can eat, the soda we can buy, or how we should best defend ourselves. Who's to tell me how many bullets are enough to defend me during a rape? 1 bullet? 5 bullets? 10 bullets? How about as many as I need to stop the rape? These politicians, these bureaucrats, need to be reminded that we're all free to make our own decisions. We all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And you know, if guns aren't right for you, don't own one. But don't you dare tell me how to best defend myself. I'm Laura Carno, an ordinary Colorado citizen who believes in the Constitution. Join me at IamCreatedEqual.com. That's IamCreatedEqual.com. This message paid for by IamCreatedEqual.com.
LR
LRC is really hot.
I found out we shared Christian values. That was one of the major factors that helped me make my decision.
I was already in a profit $2,000 or $3,000 when I got your coin.
I really trust Scott.
It's ridiculous to go any place else and buy your coin. I'm just very happy with you guys. Very, very happy with you guys.
LRCcoins.com.
Call LRC Coins at 1-888-551-2646.
You're listening to 1060 The Biz, your trusted source for health and wealth information.
Did you ever wonder what the best wine to have with popcorn is?
Would you like to get the most out of your next trip to Napa? I'm Chris.
And I'm Darcy.
And we're hosts of Travel, Wine, and Cuisine Radio.
Join us every Saturday afternoon at 3 on 1060 The Biz as we take you on a delicious adventure into the world of travel, wine, and cuisine.
Visit twcradio.com for more information. Live life to the fullest. Travel, Wine, and Cuisine Radio.
And now a check of the temperature at the Denver International Airport, where it's currently 65 degrees, 18 degrees Celsius.
Always up for a little AC/DC with our guest, Brian Rich. Brian Rich is the author of Shift and Reset and the founder and principal at Little M Media. And welcome to the show, Brian.
Thanks for having me. Good to be back.
I always get to listen to a little AC/DC when you're here, so I don't think I listen to it any other time.
Well, you're missing out then, let me tell you.
Is that all you listen to? That's all you request?
Not at all, but it is the thing that gets me, fired up and my brain going at an extra fast speed.
I assumed that was all the coffee at all the Starbucks you go to for your business meetings and whatnot. But all right, we'll give AC/DC some credit there. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's Monday, which I always love because it gets you re-engaged in a different set of conversations about what's happening in the world than you have over the weekend. The weekend doesn't, the clock doesn't stop over the weekend necessarily, but it's a very different, set of things that you focus on. So I always love to see the difference when you come back online Monday morning.
So lots of stuff. I mean, I told you I was a little unplugged this weekend, or a lot unplugged, and so kind of playing catch up a bit this morning, trying to kind of figure out what's going on and have my mind certainly in two places. But one of the things that happened was there was the White House Correspondent dinner. Is that right?
Yep, White House Correspondents Association dinner Saturday night with the president and Conan O'Brien, among others, doing their best attempts at being funny in front of a room full of media and celebrity glitterati.
Were you actually there?
No, I went one year, but wasn't really invited. I was there from a working standpoint. So I've done some work around it in the past, and I watch it every year, and I'm a big fan. Having my background's in politics, and I am, at least in part by trade, a speechwriter. So the humor speeches and the ways to take on some of the elephants in the room, if you will, through humor is always a very interesting learning experience. And then now increasingly, right, what becomes a meme and what gets pushed out online, and how the real time live tweeting and other things during that, during events like that adds just a whole new layer, a whole new interesting dynamic.
So let's talk about this idea of correspondence, and just as it relates to journalism. I was talking to Sam about crowdsourcing, the manhunt for finding the terrorists who, had attacked the Boston Marathon, and how we used social media was such a big part of that. And the big conversation since then, Brian, has been, I think, how do we vet journalism, and what's the line between journalism and and who can we trust? I mean, because major media outlets were misreporting, and people just using social media were misreporting, and it was getting very confusing. I mean, what's next? How do we make sure that the content that we're getting is accurate and authentic?
I've been thinking a lot about this, not just around Boston, but one of the things that I have the privilege of working on is an investigative journalism nonprofit. I'm head of the board of a group called Investigate West, and they intentionally focus on the longer story, the larger story. And what I keep coming to as I look at the changing role of the news media and the role that technology and the internet are playing is that it's not necessarily about the trust that you have in any one individual or any one piece of information, because trust for an individual is only as good as the context or the situation in which you encounter it. And information, particularly in something like an ongoing investigation around Boston, as an example, is constantly changing. So I think you have to now have trust in process, not in institutions per se, right? You're not going to trust the Boston Globe as the best source for information about things relating to Boston simply because they're in Boston. You're going to trust because they step up and show through their coverage and their judgment and how it's applied that they're better. So I think what we're missing in a lot of these cases is trust in the process. We don't know how people are getting their information. We don't know what biases they bring to coverage or information. We don't know what their limitations are, and with the exception of, I think, what was a very powerful apology by Reddit for making mistakes, we don't often see people held accountable for or hold themselves accountable when they do make mistakes. So we're missing kind of the structure. We're missing the process that builds in that trust and accountability in a new media age.
So let's talk about something else. You were following the NFL draft, right? I mean, you actually kind of tweeted this funny comment that Henry was excited about the NFL draft, but nicely done that didn't happen until after his bedtime. And I think that's a good point. I mean, if you want to engage a younger generation of sports fans, you got to make them accessible to them. So what do you think about the NFL draft? Did it go like you thought it would?
It did and it didn't. I mean, the draft is a fairly predictable thing, right? Every 15 minutes or so in the first round, and then increasingly shorter increments of time, people stand up and they make their picks. And Jets fans always boo no matter who they pick. And, every other team, makes the case that everyone they picked, fills whatever holes they need. What I thought was very interesting about this year's draft was there was this tension between the television broadcasting of the draft and the use of social media. So I guess there was, at least a gentleman's agreement, if you will, between the NFL, ESPN, and sort of the rest of the media that ESPN was not going to break its draft coverage online because they wanted people to tune in for the broadcast. So even though they found out that so-and-so was going to be the first pick or whatever pick, they weren't going to put that up on Twitter before they announced it on the air. And so that was intended to force audiences to watch on television. And from what I saw, the ratings were really, really high. So it worked. But at the same time, nobody else in the media, who, of course, has responsibility to their audiences, agreed to this. So if other sources, the Associated Press or Sports Illustrated or whoever, right, found out who a pick was going to be through one of its sources, they were tweeting it. So the commentators on television were behind, and, everyone else was scrambling online. And at the same time, there was still a large audience that participated in the television broadcast. So there was this whole sort of upending of where do you get good information and what makes sense to watch. And, sort of related to the question you asked before, who do you ultimately trust for access to, that right content? So as a sporting event, it is what it is. And I always enjoy trying to figure that out. As a media event and an information consumption event, it was, I'm still trying to make sense of it.
We're seeing that, though. We're seeing that television reporting, they're a little more typically a little cautious, a little afraid to be first, and maybe rightfully so, because you want to make sure that your information is accurate. But yet we're if we want to find out immediate information, we're going to Twitter. We're trying to vet those sources, and I do think there needs to be, I keep saying, challenging somebody to some sort of program, some sort of software out there that's going to help us vet everything. Okay, so this is probably, on some football fans' minds, but Tim Tebow is no longer with you. Mentioned the Jets and how they boo everything. Tim Tebow is this morning, they said that he has been relieved of his position. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's probably, not a bad football decision. It is really blowing up on social media. Absolutely. My timeline and lots of other people's timelines, Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else, are all dominated by this, which is funny because, he's probably a bigger deal in social media and sort of media celebrity circles than he is, than is warranted, I should say, based on his, NFL performance to date. He's he's clearly not a top-tier starter. He's a mid-level quarterback at best, but he is certainly one that people like to talk about and tweet about and whatnot. So it's probably it looks like a bigger story than it actually is, because of the amplification that social has provided to it.
Oh, he's been a huge part of NFL and social media. Okay, what about this, what the cover, I think it was the New York Times Magazine, had a cover story about cancer and advocacy. I know you have this huge beef with this whole idea of, social media and raising awareness for nonprofits. And you say, I think what you said is raising awareness with no impact in nonprofits. What did you think about the story in the New York Times Magazine?
I think it was a hugely important story, a must-read for sure. The question that needs to be raised more, that I've raised before, that this story raised is awareness enough? If we are not making progress towards finding cures to cancer, towards helping people to access the life-saving treatments or whatever it is that they need to do, are we in fact focusing on the right things and making the right progress? And I would suggest no. Awareness is far from enough, and we're oriented around awareness, so we have to change our orientation if we want to see some impact.
I want to talk more about that and some things that we can do to make a difference and why you're so passionate about it, as well as much more. Stay tuned to the Tonya Hall Show and follow us on Twitter. Go to @TonyaHallRadio on Twitter, or you can join us on our Facebook page. Go to Tonya Hall on Facebook. I will connect with you there. I take your questions and whatnot. Our guest today is Brian Rich. You can find out more about him and his book, because he's the author of Shift and Reset. You can Google Shift and Reset and order it on Amazon. We'll be right back.
I'm Phil Grandy of Phil's Gang. You know what drives me absolutely nuts? Is when they tell us that the market's going up because companies are doing really well and that the economy is turning around. What are you, nuts? The economy's not turning around. All that's turning around is they keep on borrowing more money, keep interest rates low. You join the gang. Make sure you're in the right stocks.
Why not check out philsgang.com or give us a call, 877-600-4264.
Retirement, the ultimate vacation. You wouldn't go on a vacation without researching where you're going, where to stay, and how to get there. So why wouldn't you put the time and effort in to plan for the ultimate vacation, retirement? Verostic Tax and Financial presents an 8-hour class packed with information on banking, insurance, and brokerage products, as well as real estate and taxes. The 3 biggest thieves to a happy retirement are bad advice, inflation, and taxes. The class runs Tuesday nights from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. for 4 weeks starting May 21st. The cost is $69 for singles or $89 for couples. For more information, call 303-776-0867. That's 303-776-0867. So mark your calendar starting May 21st. On Tuesdays from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. for 4 weeks to plan your ultimate vacation, retirement.
Hey, it's Brian Baker, host of The Gold Standard, inviting you to check out my show where we talk about what's happening in precious metals markets, how to go about properly saving for retirement, and what's going on in the global economy as it relates to you. And get this, we do it all without a bunch of doom and gloom. I know, it's refreshing, right? It's The Gold Standard with me, Brian Baker. Hope you get a chance to check out the show.
Our broadcast of The Gold Standard with Brian Baker airs 3 p.m. weekdays on 1060 The Biz.
Consumer spending climbs more than forecast on U.S. services. From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York, I'm Karen Moscow. Consumer spending in the U.S. rose more than projected in March. The Commerce Department said household purchases, which account for about 70% of the economy, climbed 0.2% after a 0.7% gain the prior month. Incomes increased less than forecast, and inflation cooled to the lowest level in more than 3 years. Another report today showed more Americans than forecast signed contracts to buy previously owned homes in March. The National Association of Realtors said the index of pending home sales increased 1.5% after a revised 1% decline the prior month. That was larger than initially reported. Stocks are moving higher following these reports. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 0.4% or 64 points. S&P 500 up 0.5% or 8 points. NASDAQ up 0.8% or 25 points. COMEX Gold up 1.3% or $19.20. That's a Bloomberg Market Minute.
Taking a look at temperature conditions in Fort Collins, Colorado. Currently it's 63 degrees Fahrenheit, 17 degrees Celsius.
Where we embrace the power of the web and how we're using the internet today. Our guest this last segment, again, is Brian Rich, who is the author of Shift and Reset. And I keep asking you, Brian, when you're going to come out with your next book, and I'm still waiting.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. I keep saying, and, maybe you don't have enough publishers listening to your show, but, It's not for lack of, ideas or interest. It's, I think books are important, and, I want to do it right. So, I want to be given the opportunity to do it right. So I'll keep pushing, and, if someone out there wants to, give me that opportunity, I'm all for it.
If you haven't tapped into Brian, you should. Brian, so we were talking about this idea of, which you're probably most passionate above anything else, and you certainly have your fingers in all of what's happening in this marketing digital space, and you're such about doing the right thing, and you're have this incredible passion about awareness and nonprofits. What's getting your attention right now, and why is that still such an important topic to you?
Well, I mean, I think you're seeing a lot more, for-profit organizations, startups, and others, pile in on the social change, impact on the world conversation. And I think that's great. I continue to suggest and press the point that I think we need to, really confirm that everyone is focused on the right things. I was saying before the break that awareness isn't enough. If we really want to have impact, then we probably have to restructure and reorganize our approach a little bit. So we talked a couple weeks ago when I was on the show about Forward, Mark Zuckerberg, and, that crowd's, new thing around immigration. And there was a story late last week about how they are also fronting money for television ads and some other things related to some other issues. And, look, I'm all for organizations, taking on a variety of issues. But, if you're the people who built Facebook and LinkedIn and, all these other amazing digital organizations that have engaged people in new and compelling ways, why are you spending so much of your money and energy on television ads? Like, I think, that whole construct of advocacy and engagement around serious issues just needs to be, revisited in a really significant way. And I think the more that folks like a Mark Zuckerberg or whoever fall into the same old patterns that we have always fallen into on this stuff, the more it reinforces the bad behavior, and it makes it a lot tougher for us to break new ground. And that would obviously be very disappointing.
I couldn't agree more. So with football season starting and NFL, I'm segueing back to that a little bit. What can we expect to see from their engagement and social? Is it too soon to see that yet?
No, I mean, I think, one of the things you saw with the NFL draft, you're seeing with a lot of sports, is really creating a dedicated second screen experience. And I would suggest this should be true for everyone. So if you are at the ballpark, if you are at the stadium, if you're watching on television, whatever, we all have phones and tablets and, almost near ubiquitous internet connection, wireless connections, and things like that. So offering me, for example, the opportunity to watch a game that I'm already at or already watching on television isn't enough, right? I want a unique parallel experience, something that's complementary. So I think you're going to see the NFL starting to do a lot more, very much the same way I think Major League Baseball has been doing for years. You're seeing NASCAR, you're seeing the NHL and NBC and their coverage of the playoffs coming up, and the NBA to a certain extent doing this as well. Like, complementing whatever it is that the fan experiences, diehard fan experience in particular, with, across all these other screens. And more importantly, I would suggest, and this is an area that has not been, really filled in as well as I would like, what happens in between games. So if you take the National Football League as an example, your team only plays once a week. And the league maybe plays, 3 days a week, Monday, Thursday, and Sunday. But the rest of the week, you want to make sense of what happened or get prepared for the next week. And it's an opportunity to learn and engage fans, differently. It's an opportunity to share experiences. Some of that gets captured by things like fantasy, but I think there's a media experience, a second screen experience to sort of bridge that gap between games that you're starting to see some folks go towards, but still a lot of opportunity not yet realized.
What's your favorite sport, Brian?
It's a tough one. I mean, I'm a sports fan, so I love sports of all kinds, big, small, competitive or not. I think, baseball really is the sport that I love the most, in large part because it has no time, right? There's no clock. And so everything, every pitch, every hit, every different ballpark, every day with weather, everything, it's a totally different, unique experience. The confines of the game are limitless. There are no confines, I should say. So it's just one of those things where you can just immerse yourself in the game in a way that I don't think happens with pretty much any other sport, and both enjoy it or participate in some way, but also obviously learn and share that experience in ways that other sports don't offer.
So I have a question. Pepsi's head of global digital made a comment on social media saying that he's going to write a book, and his next book is going to be about unmarketing and this idea that we need to kind of really rethink the way that we're marketing. Well, there's been some controversy about that, and he's a super smart guy. In fact, I was recently watching an interview with Shiv and Joel Idelson of Allen and Garrettson, and there's been a couple of others recently. But there's somebody who actually has used unmarketing as their book name and their title, and so there's a little bit of controversy on social media about this idea, this expectation that you should be able to Google something and know what's out there before you actually kind of make comments about it. And I can kind of understand this idea that I honestly don't know every person in social media, and I don't know every marketing book that's ever been written. So it's a mistake that I think anybody could make. What do you think about that? I mean, what do you think about this whole idea that the expectation of I own something?
I guess as an author, I can totally respect where, Scott Stratton is coming from in terms of, having worked hard to build his brand and, associate himself with the term unmarketing. I certainly want the brand equity that comes with the work that I put into, things like Shift and Reset, or Little M Media, the book I wrote, the company, I created, et cetera. But, I come at this from a different direction, which is, my hope is to have some impact or influence on the way that people think and the way that they act and the way that organizations work, and certainly as it relates to what we were talking about before, the impact, the measurable outcomes that they have against serious issues and the problems that we face in our society. So if somebody else wants to embrace the idea of shifting and resetting and do that work as I had started to line it up and can take it to other places, I'm okay with that. I'd like to be brought along because I'd like to be a part of that if there are other people who want to help embrace that and run with it. But I don't feel like I need to shut someone else down because they choose to adopt my phrasing or try to put their own spin on a word. I think that's very sort of undigital, unconnected society kind of thinking. Maybe that was true in the past, and like I said, I totally respect things like copyright and trademark and people's ability to own their ideas. But I don't think you can, be the only one that gets credit for something. And a sort of rising tide lifts all boats would be a better approach, a better strategy. If anything, it should probably end up selling more books for Scott Stratton if the head of Pepsi starts to talk about it using the same phrasing.
I think you're probably right. I understand,
it, and it's awkward, but
it is awkward. But I kind of feel the same way. It just feels. It feels, to coin Scott's phrase, awkward, but awkward in a way that I feel like today with social media, with the way that as a society we're connected, it's different than how we were in the past. I think we're more connected. We care more about everyone, and we should be more supportive, and hopefully we can be. I love having you on the show, Brian, and I love how you're literally involved in everything. And what can we expect coming in from you? What do you get your eyes on in the next week?
Well, definitely looking at at sports because we're entering the summer and we're seeing a lot of interesting stuff. The NBA playoffs are on, and I always say we learn a lot from sports. I'm looking at what the sports world is doing that can teach us. Sports Illustrated just put the first gay athlete on the cover. That's going to blow up on social media. I think we got a lot from the advocacy side we can learn from that as well. So how sports changes the world as always, or at least that's an excuse to watch sports. Go with that.
Well, thanks, Brian, for coming on the show. And thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with more digital marketing and social media. Talk then.